The Full Circle Podcast. Compelling interviews and incredible tales from Colorado's western slope, from the mountains to the desert. Christy Reese and her team hear from the movers, shakers, and characters of the Grand Valley and surrounding mountain towns that make the western slope the place we all love. You'll learn, you'll laugh, you'll love with The Full Circle.
Hey, this is Jen Taylor with the Christy Reese Group. How lucky am I, joined by the illustrious local maverick of real estate, commercial real estate specifically, Mike Foster. Welcome, Mike.
Thank you for having me, Jen.
Yeah.
It's good to be in your presence virtually.
Yeah, virtually, exactly. You're too nice. You shine from afar. I was trying to do a drum roll there, but the effect was lost. So yeah, we'll try again later. Hey, I want to thank you for joining us for this week's edition of our podcast. We love to interview local leaders and influencers in the Valley and tell your story. We want to put the shine on you for a little bit. So I hope you've cleared your calendar, silenced your phone for a little bit. I know you're a busy man, so the world will have to wait for you.
Yeah, voicemail. There'll be plenty of it. There's always more of it. No doubt. If we could power the world on voicemail, we'd be set.
That's right. Hey, I've got a nice glass of tea. I'll be slugging on that throughout our conversation. And tell me, where are we talking to you from? What's the view that we see there?
That's my office with the Navajo snow painting in the back, and half of the Grand Mesa and half of the Caucasus region in Russia.
Oh,
so map. Wow. So there you go. Three things that are near and dear to my heart.
I love it. Well, okay. So we're going to start out by talking about Mike Foster at large. So tell us your story in 30 minutes or less. We'll try and keep that part brief, but we want to get on to some more latest information from Mike Foster and leading information from the commercial real estate industry. But tell us about how you landed where you are right now.
Well, I grew up in Grand Junction, and then, following high school, took off and went out in the world for quite a bit of time, a good 20 years or so. Spent a lot of time in Denver, fair amount of time, a little bit of time in Russia, a little bit of time in Jackson, Wyoming, some various places, and always knew I wanted to get back to the Grand Valley because I had the Ute curse pretty bad. And eventually found my way back here in 2008, pretty much right January at the top of the natural gas boom, and rode that boom downwards like all dedicated Grand Valley people do, and then rode it back up the next turn of the wheel, which has been population growth in the Valley and seeing my kids through school. I've got a son and a daughter, middle school daughter, high school son, and practicing real estate, skiing whenever I can, getting out whenever I can.
So did the skiing originate here in the Valley, or was that part Russia, part Jackson, where all of the above?
Oh, the skiing itself? Mm-hmm. Yeah, the skiing is something my family's was involved in the mid 60s, then through the 1970s until the early 80s. There used to be a ski club, kind of like we have with the Nordic Club. That used to be the way it was for the Alpine mountain. And that ski club decided that they really wanted to build a real ski area, and a bunch of locals got together and sold 1,000 shares of stock to local business people or whoever they could find to buy it. And then they got a small business loan from the SBA, the only time the SBA ever loaned money on a ski area, and probably the last time they ever do it. But built 2 lifts.
Really?
Yeah, and they built, my dad was a big part of it. They built, they cut all the runs and put in a lift in literally probably 9 months. They, once they got started, it just happened. It wasn't a 5-year, planning process in the 1960s. They just hired a logger, surveyed it, put the lift in, and just went to town. So that was 1965, and we still have our local ski area. Another and the chair 2 happened in 73, and it was another company privately that did that, but it ended up being one ski area in the end of the day. So that's the story of Powderhorn real quickly.
There it is.
So,
I've heard bits and pieces of that story, and I love that. Of course, it was the Foster family. You guys still own some property up there on the Grand Mesa, do you not?
yeah, we do. We have a little bit up above chair 2, and then some down in the base area. Various things that went on, leftover parcels from grand visions of orthodontists and different people who wanted to take the ski area all the way to Utah if they could, basically.
Oh
So it's interesting. And then, down here, we're plugging away at our office, retail, industrial market, finding tenants, getting buildings stabilized, building buildings. Lots going on in the commercial market. Took a little bit of a step back. Numbers wise, in 2020, down about 28% on sales volume off of 2019. But if you average the 2 years, they're still up over 2018. So sales volume is pretty good, and 2021 is looking promising.
Good.
So
same on the residential side. Yeah, we hear a lot of that. I know we don't get as much light to talk about the commercial side of things. So I definitely want to go back to that. But I love kind of pulling a little bit more on. You're probably not one to sit and spin a yarn on some of those old stories and the lore of the Grand Valley, but your family has so much. You've really had the needle in your hand stitching the story. So what, as you talk about your skiing, your passion for skiing comes honestly and earnestly. Do you guys have a place up on the Mesa?
We don't. We just, yeah, I'm a big, the commute has gotten a lot shorter to the ski area. I really feel like the ski area now is like driving to Fruta. When it used to be as a 7-year-old, the road through Plateau Canyon was probably twice as long in distance because there was probably twice as many turns in that canyon when they originally built the road. And, so nowadays it just feels like I'm hardly going anywhere to go skiing. So it's just easy up, easy down. So yeah. But there's quite a bit going on up there. I mean, there's definitely a pretty good plan in the works for some tiny homes, as you know, some interest, I think, in expanding some of the lodging right at the base. I think there's some discussions about that. Fair amount of sales of houses up there in the last year or so, 2 years. It's kind of taken off, and
lots are going quick, and property, homes, cabins, second homes are going quick, and some primary residences for folks as well. So it's exciting. It's good. And more mountain bike trails being cut every year, and more of an investment into the year-round attributes of the resort. So
and really smart ownership. When, the current Andy Daly and the Garts and the Walton family, I believe, have taken over. Andy's done a really good job of focusing on what's important, working on the quad, getting a detached quad, getting the snowmaking. That's a major upgrade on snowmaking this year. To be able to ski at Powderhorn in what's been pretty bad snow year statewide, and right second week of December, we're skiing top to bottom with that incredible snowmaking system that doesn't use a lot of energy because you don't have to pump the water from the bottom to the top.
Right.
So it's
grooming to keep the snow in good shape too.
Yeah. So that's they're smart. There's been some past owners that really kind of came in and kind of could have done a detachable quad when they did, but they decided to make a brass rail bar and some other things as opposed to investing in the mountains. So anyway.
Exactly. I know. And we're all thankful for that, for sure. We've watched our resort. I've lived here for 28 years now. You grew up here with a 20-year hiatus, the missing years of Mike Foster.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
You come back and it's different and it's the same at the same time. So great that way.
like a soap opera. Pick up right where you left off. Yep. We love it here. So what took you to Russia? Tell us about that.
I had a archaeological dig in Uzbekistan that I got a grant to go do with UNESCO. And I got there, and the Gorbachev coup happened while I was in Uzbekistan. And I decided that I wanted to stay. And one of the people I met there told me about an open teaching job. So I took a job teaching English, stayed through that year. It was my junior year in college, and then finished college and went back to pursue some small-time pursuits in exporting Russian climbing shoes and ice axes and different things, and importing Polar Tech fleece seconds into Russia to sell to the cottage industry there, and kind of immersed myself in Russian and got pretty good at it. It's not an easy language to master, but really enjoyed. Had a couple 2-3 years, and then came back.
How many people in your modern day life right now? How many people know that story about you?
Oh, probably not many.
That's fascinating. I had never.
It's a long time ago. It was the early 1990s, so time flies and things get in the rearview mirror. So
yeah. We take our detours in life, and that's such, adds such luster to our stories. And by golly, that's great stuff. So you were a junior in college. Where did you go to school?
Undergraduate, went to the University of Wyoming for a year, and then transferred to Colorado College. Great thing about the University of Wyoming was I got in-state tuition because my dad was a graduate from there. Okay. And that's the fantastic thing about Wyoming. They have that caveat. So in-state tuition in Wyoming is quite a bargain. And then Colorado College for 3 years, and then did my graduate MBA at DU. And with a focus specialization in real estate.
In real estate. Oh, that's it. So we share that. So that was your graduate degree. That was my undergrad degree. I went to DU. Was in Denver for a few years. So you stayed on the Front Range for a little while there. Colorado College, of course, being in Colorado Springs. Did they have a program back then?
Yeah, they had the block plan.
You're such a puppy.
Way back then. Yes. Yeah. And so then it was mainly post-college, post-graduate school. Went and worked with Jackson Hole in their base village when they were building that out, when they did the Four Seasons Hotel, and various projects there. They ran out of development rights, at the end of that process. So I went back to Denver, worked in the home building industry for about 8 years, doing land acquisition and development for major home builders, and then found my way back to Grand Junction following that. So,
what year was that when you made your way back this side of the divide?
Right in January 2008.
Got it. So that's what a great time to be coming back to continue focus on real estate.
Yeah.
Yeah. The rebuild happens now at that point.
That's right.
Yeah.
And so, you look at it, I think about 2014, we started having more people moving in than moving out at that point. And then the rest is history, since we've had this phenomenal population growth going on, driving other things, and the university growing and the medical community growing, and the demand that creates.
The pillars of our economic pillars, I think of them, visualize that quite often. And you just hit two of the big ones. What do you think has been the major, I think, driver or contributor in the Valley in the last 4 to 5 years that has really kind of, thrown us into this whole new, really national and international stratosphere?
Well, I think what you start happening, we're late in the national cycle, and inevitably, we had the nationwide housing recession, 08, 09, 010. And then the municipalities that had the least amount of development and speculative housing recovered first. Denver was one of those because it was having some growth constraints during the 2006, 2007 boom. Mm-hmm. So they didn't quite have the same hangover that Vegas and Phoenix had. Some of those other areas where the speculation got pretty rampant. So those areas rebounded pretty quickly. And then the other areas that were really being focused on at that time were the major metros like New York, San Francisco, Los Angeles, the core of the core. That's where the money went back first and then spilled out in the secondary markets. And it took a while, commercial investment wise, and just even apartments for investors to start moving out of those areas and into tertiary markets like Western Colorado or other parts of the Mountain West. And I think what's really interesting in the last year is when you think about Denver, a market like Denver, a market like Salt Lake, when they reach a point where institutional investors start taking over from large private investors, and what happens in those situations is the private investor sells an asset that's an investment asset and can't replace it in that market. They can't go and buy something else at the yield that they want. So they'll go up and down. Denver grows up and down I-25. So those investors will drive north or they'll drive south on I-25. In Salt Lake, they'll drive north on I-15 or south on I-15, St. George up to Boise. So, and it's a little bit harder for that investment money to circulate down I-70. But in the last 6 months, what we've seen is the resort communities, because of COVID and some other dynamics, really in Colorado and other places, really overflowing and having a lot of investors in those markets say, okay, now I cannot replace my investment dollars in Aspen or Vail or any of the resort communities. Where am I going to take my dollars? Am I going to take them to Denver? Well, I don't really like Denver very much. I want to keep my money in a kind of in my backyard. And their backyard is Grand Junction or other areas that are nearby these resort communities. So now we're seeing a lot of development dollars and other things happening here that are chasing. The other phenomenon you had in your housing market in Denver, it happened very quickly, was when they were ready to grow, they still didn't have the infrastructure and the ability to produce single family houses. In Denver, they had the same problem we're having now. They just had it 5 years ago or 8 years ago, and then became the easiest way to do multifamily housing. It was the replacement for the inability to do single family. Mm-hmm. So now we're starting to see our market move to a multifamily market more. And, for the first time, we had 196 units all built in one fell swoop. Yeah. And more to follow. So that's an interesting trend.
Right. I think at one point in 2020, I heard a statistic that there were 3,000 plus, so over 3,000 multifamily units in either planning, development or permit or build stage. And that's the first time in, when would you say, 30, 40, maybe even 40 years in Grand Junction since there's been that much of a rush for multifamily enthusiastic?
Yeah, absolutely. And you can, if you really want to look at it anecdotally, you can just look at the large multifamily projects. I mean, if you break it down, in 1996 to 2000, there was a 180 unit project built that was strictly multifamily, not fourplexes and those kind of things, which aggregate to that 3,000, but a big project, all money in one place. So there was one, and then 2006 and 7, there were a handful of 50 unit projects, 100 unit projects, about 3 of them, and they got going, and then there was a hard stop. So we went 2001 to 2008, and then we went from 2008 to about 2017 before we had another major multifamily project built. So you get this pent-up demand that gets created, and it's hard to underwrite, because when you look at the overall housing base, it's 1978, 79, 80, 81. It was all built way back during some other resource booms that we had. And it's older products. It just can't rent at the numbers that you could automatically look at it and say, well, look at those rents. I can build a new product. So somebody had to pioneer it. And once we've got this 196 unit project, the rail yard at Rimrock. We've got another project over off of 24 and a half road that's 150 units. And those reset the market. They create rental rates that we didn't know we could do. Exactly. And now others are saying, I think I can build a project. So it's real interesting.
Yeah, we've got proof of concept now. So it's happening. It's exciting. We're starting to see a mix, would you agree, in the demographic of who those tenants are, who the occupants are, the people that are moving here to buy, sell, rent, et cetera?
Well, I think you're seeing more and more young people in the community. You see you being a contributor to that, and the medical community being a contributor to that. And then what you hear about the newer generations not necessarily want to live where they work, but they want to work where they want to live. And that difference in mindset, and then the ability to work remotely. And what I tend to see in some of these buildings is, at least some of the newer ones that have been leased up, is young couples and then empty nesters, kind of a combination of those two. And then, when you go to other markets up I-70, Glenwood, for instance, you're seeing pretty good demand for just single units, studio units and one bedroom units, and a little bit of resistance to sharing a two bedroom. So even though the dollars are better, people wanting their own space and having that mix. And so that resort market, I mean, when LinkedIn looks at us, they see Grand Junction as really, to them, Grand Junction goes all the way from Carbondale to Moab, right? It's a virtual Grand Junction. It's a little bigger drive time wise than we're used to. But that I-70 corridor does link up for quite a few people that do commute all the way up to the Roaring Fork Valley and sometimes reverse commute. So that's an interesting part of it too.
That migratory path, and then we see that south down to Montrose as well, certainly with Delta and also to Montrose. Yeah. I know. I certainly am enjoying watching that. Going back to the conversation about the economic pillars of our community and how certainly CMU and your family having a lot to do with that through the years. Our healthcare system having 4 regional healthcare facilities here in the Valley. Tech is a story that wasn't even around 5 years ago with GJEP's efforts, and certainly OREC. That's one of my favorite topics to talk about. Let's pause on that one just for a minute. What, as we segue into commercial more specifically, what are you seeing as kind of, and you being an outdoor enthusiast, what are you seeing some of the top stories coming in from the outdoor sector into the commercial space in the Grand Valley?
I'm seeing just recreation as an attractor, mountain biking giving us a resort element from the lifestyle perspective, and that's getting eyeballs into the valley from other resort markets. And the manufacturing side is interesting, with mountain racing products and others, actual outdoor manufacturers. The REI relocating and centering up in more in the commercial retail core, leaving the 7th Street location and going to a more regional location because we're a stopping off point on the way to Moab. Moab being a tail that wags the dog, and we don't know it sometimes. When you go to have coffee in March and you're wondering why is there a line out the door of the coffee shop, and they tell you it's because they're having Jeep Safari in Moab and all the mountain bikers are in Grand Junction. So some interesting dynamics there. As far as the commercial market, we've got an environment or an ecosystem. I think of commercial real estate as ecosystems, and we have some old growth forests that some of the trees have fallen over and they need to get re-energized. We have some large shop and yard buildings that were built 2006, 7, 8, during our gas boom, and they're being reabsorbed. Alpine Lumber came in and bought a pretty large trucking facility, turned it into a lumber yard. Roofing company bought another facility. We've got an incredible manufacturer of energy efficient, net zero homes that is using Grand Junction as a home base to serve communities all the way from Driggs, Idaho, Vail, Aspen, Taos, and they're selling into those markets. They're a modular manufacturer, and they're looking at a pretty large expansion, currently buying a building and are going to be manufacturing units there. And, that's going to be exciting. So, the construction industry is really a big driver, and it's a regional industry that can scale and serve more areas than just the Grand Valley. Mm-hmm. So that's been a use for some of those industrial buildings. And then, the retail market is really doing well, given that we're getting our mall re-energized. Yes, and in our regional mall is an interesting phenomenon, because if you have a regional mall in a major metro, well, there's 6 or 7 of them, and they all cannibalize each other. Whereas our mall is pretty lucky; it's got a 150-mile trade area all to itself, and it allows national retailers to really feel comfortable stepping out. So we have the Dick's 55,000 square foot lease happening. We've got the Dillard's, which they've bought the site, and they're going to be back in shopping season, I presume, by the end of this year. The mm-hmm. Home Store, the redevelopment of the Sutherlands, and the pad retail. And what'll be really nice is to get our hospitality market back and get that cranking, and our airport, and those kind of things. But so
direct flight to Mexico soon. That's what we're all waiting for.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. It is. It's exciting. There's so much to talk about. Attending the Colorado University of Colorado Lead School of Business, the economic forecast. They talked about Mesa County being in the best position in all of the counties of the state of Colorado with regard to our scores and having, being the closest to our pre-COVID unemployment rates. And we've bounced back quicker. And you mentioned it earlier, we're a little bit of a latent economy, but we are solid. And it's exciting to see external forces coming in and internal forces reinvesting in our own community. So like you said, this is back when 2014 or so is when we started seeing fewer people moving out than moving in. And so it's a good thing. We're on a good trend.
Yes, absolutely.
Can I ask you a question? Another question? What do you think about, so we've got, in our, for those that are listening from regionally here, locally, recreational marijuana is coming back up on the docket this spring. I think about that quite a bit with regard to not only, how that will affect the retail landscape of our community, but also the commercial landscape and warehouse and et cetera. Have you thoughts on that? I'd love to hear anything that you might have to share.
Well, there's some interesting dynamics with that. In Denver, they obviously had a fair amount of leasing of industrial warehouses. And the funny thing is they were really going after, in an industrial warehouse, the taller the better is, mm-hmm. and the lower the ceiling height, the more obsolete a building is. Well, that marijuana flipped that on its head, because the low ceiling height is a benefit for that kind of activity if you're going to grow things inside. So those buildings that were in the 6th Avenue corridor really did well and it attract to that for that market. So, as far as Grand Junction goes, one of the things that happens is that if you're leasing to a marijuana tenant, it has to be an all equity situation, because there's no bank financing for that. So that tends to drive up lease rates for that product type. Mm-hmm. But it also makes it to where not every building can be available for that use. Mm-hmm. So we'll see how that translates. We'll see what the community response is to it. the politics of it remain to be seen. What happens there? I think there's been some discussion about not having, where it would be in the market, and keeping it on the I-70 business loop corridors or on the periphery of the community, not necessarily in the front door in the center of the community. The growing of, one of the other things that the community has to be cognizant of is the hemp industry, and growing outside creates a problem for those that want produce hemp that is low THC. Right. So you don't want any cross pollination there. And then there's others that talk about the brand identity of not being a place where retail marijuana is, and so I think there's benefits. There could be benefits depending on what happens either way, because maintaining that cachet isn't all bad either. So we'll see what happens.
We'll see what happens. I know it's a couple times now. It's been through the cycles here. So curious to see and how that might affect, for some of the property owners here in the Valley, and the opportunities of different. So as we talk about warehouse, so specifically on that, what are you seeing? What's the most challenging size of warehouse right now, or what's most available in terms of warehouse space at the moment?
The 10 and 15,000 square foot, 10 to 20,000 square foot drive-in warehouse without the docks and with lots of yard. We don't have the yard demand that we used to have. Again, construction industry is pulling some of that up. We're seeing some demand drivers on, diesel repair, and some other, auto related uses. But that's right this very minute. That's a little bit of a challenging, and what's interesting about this market and the commercial market is everything cycles differently. You'll have industrial shopping yards slow for 2 quarters. And then when it starts picking up, warehouse slows down. But each one of these little segments, retail has its own thing, but we've had some good warehouse leases from what I've from trying to offer on I've been trying to offer on a 55,000 square feet dock high warehouse downtown. I've been told it's leased. I just did a 18,000 square foot lease for the VA on a dock high space. There's been some, like I said, a 15,000 square foot building that's going to be expanded to 20,000 square feet. That's going to close here in a couple of weeks. Lots of land activity. And then the interesting dynamic in the industrial market is the industrial leasing, and we have tenants that want to be owners. And so if they're going to own their own space, then the landlords are going to have to find a replacement tenant. So there's been a little bit of a phenomenon where industrial rates have chased interest rates down. Because interest rates are low, tenants are buying and buying existing buildings. But just like you have in the residential market, eventually you're going to run out of those existing buildings, just like you run out of the existing housing stock and you start having to build new housing stock. And we're kind of entering that inflection point where we're becoming more of an industrial construction market. And that's going to push rates, lease rates back up, because it's not going to be as easy to buy that building that you want.
Right.
So, some different things going on there.
I love it. Talk to us about office space, Class A and otherwise office space, and the bigger question that you probably get hit up with and probably talk about ad nauseum, but COVID and how that's affecting office space. Let's talk about that.
Yeah. So we're a little bit of a smaller user. We're a small user office market, and we're more nimble. A big office floor plate for us is the BLM. That was a big lease. That was a 17,000 square foot lease on a couple of floors. Whereas a lot of our office ecosystem is 2,500 square feet, 1,500 square feet, 5,000 square feet is a big lease. So that's a little bit easier to manage COVID in those smaller office environments, to where when you're dealing in larger cities where you're dealing with 100,000 square foot floor plates, 50,000 square foot office floor plates, national office tenants that make decisions nationwide, you'll have an executive in New York saying, well, we're sending all the employees home everywhere. I don't care if they live in Denver. I don't care where they live, because I'm going home. Everybody's going home. And so what I've noticed is that our office market has just been a little bit more resilient because it's smaller and more nimble.
Yeah. And we're seeing more construction as well. Would you say, at least I'm noticing, more investment in Class A office scapes?
Yeah, we definitely have. And the tenants have been pretty receptive to it, wanting a new space and being willing to pay for it. You know, your firm being a prime example of that, stepping out and saying, hey, we want to be on the riverfront. We want to be in a Class A building, and we want to have a good work environment. And, you know, you've got a national engineering firm that's in your building as well, KLJ, which is, I think, come here for the talent at CMU's civil engineering and mechanical engineering program. And then we've got financial services, a large infrastructure finance firm that's circulating in the market. And we have, 3 different brand new office projects. We have one on more traditional Patterson Road corridor. We have one downtown, which is which is kind of tenant self-anchoring, an owner occupying half of his own building and leasing to others, but having a vision that wanting to do something different, which is very interesting on Main Street. And then the same goes with, the Bonsai building, that being a building that they occupy themselves as well. So it's pretty dynamic office market all of a sudden. Some really nice buildings and some great build outs and good things happening.
Right. And migration within. Yeah. We're going to step away from our awesome, smaller footprint, but very historically relevant and very vibey office space downtown, to we're kind of, very proud to be part of this new generation of riverfront occupants. And we're chasing, the lifestyle tax is very meaningful to all of us. We want to live and work where we play and live where we work. So that's the macro story of the greater Grand Junction area for sure. We're just
and there's going to be a lot more living down there because you've got a pretty large apartment project nearby to go with the raft launch and the lake and the incredible trail connectivity, and probably some more some more multifamily west and retail west as well with Dos Rios. So and some glamping, I think, over in Dos Rios.
We'll be drinking margaritas and have the opportunity to stay on the river soon. So stay and play. Again, that's the story of the way we live, how we live. Yeah, it's exciting. There'll also be some light industrial down there as well. So there'll be a little bit of everything in the mixed use genre of the future. So yeah, it's very exciting. What a great time to live where we live, Mike. You're at the forefront. You're connecting the dots and pulling the strings and, pushing the buttons, and you've got the stories. You're like this is not probably going to come across right, but you're like the EMT forefront of commercial real estate. Like you've got the action.
Yeah, well, but the residential market makes it happen because people want to live here, and they're creating jobs where they live, and it's really phenomenal to watch. Because you have these 500 person firms or 200 person firms that aren't taking an office presence. They're just taking a virtual presence, and these people are here, and they're dynamic people in our community, creating retail opportunities for small businesses, service opportunities for small businesses, just by being here and doing what they do virtually, which is really cool. I think, I don't know how many people you're running into on the residential side, but I think you're probably running into some pretty dynamic folks that don't necessarily have a commercial location for their employment.
I'll just use a reference of, so I'm in COVID quarantine. I'll admit it right now, but I did do a virtual tour today with some folks who are moving here from the Front Range. The husband restores van life. He restores Sprinter vans into the full camper van life experience. Very super high end. And then the wife is a professional climber and has a climbing, dancing kind of parkour company as well. She's got her own space, and they're moving to Grand Junction. They're restless where they live on the Front Range. They travel half the year. They're again, that lifestyle tax. They're living the life, and they found that Grand Junction embodies everything that is the value set to them. And this is where they want to, live their life to their fullest expression, be it their personal lives as well as their professional lives. So it's really, it's beautiful, and it's fun to be recipient hearing these stories and help connect the dots for folks.
It is fun. And it's fun to, to indulge the Sprinter van refurbisher, or the Timberleaf, teardrop trailer manufacturer, or the aftermarket Mercedes-Benz parts purveyor who has a spouse who has a vineyard here. And it's funny because I'm working the hardcore industrial market with him. And then one day I go to the vineyard with this awesome view of the book list, and there he is. And I'm like, wait a second. It's just, you see people on two sides. It's fun.
That's great. That's good stuff. Okay. So as we getting out your crystal magic 8 ball for the year ahead, 2021 and into 2022, what's your trend line? What are you seeing?
I'm seeing more land transactions to facilitate the residential growth, quite a bit of that. Seeing continued office leasing because when the residential market expands, you have a lot of you have engineering, architecture, planning, mortgage brokerage, real estate brokerage, all those things that are office tenants. I think it'll be good to see the nonprofit community kind of get some resources underneath it, and expand and get more resilient. So I think that's going to be, office market will probably continue to do well. I think retail market will be back even stronger. And I think we're going to start seeing business formation in the second half of the year. We'll see the employment side, the industrial side come back. So where we were, down 20% on our sales volume, I think we'll be up 20% over 2020 coming out of 2021. So investment demand still very strong as well. And that's a challenging product type because you have to have the income producing properties to serve it. So and that's leasing dependent. So anyway.
I'll tell you another thing. So as you mentioned earlier too, we talk about hospitality, restaurants. I read something, I think it was also that Leeds School of Business economic forecast for the state. They talked about pre-COVID being the baseline of 0, and looking at, I think this was 3 months ago or so, maybe 2 months ago, it was talking about 7 out of 10 restaurants were facing closure in the short term in the state of Colorado, which is just a horrifying thing. We know that restaurants are struggling, but oh my goodness, that's horrifying to hear for small business owners. But then if they can hang on, like the forecast is that as we get into Q3 of 21, that will slingshot up back on over about 6.7% of pre-COVID baseline 0. So the opportunity in, again, restaurant and hospitality, tourism, of course, wags that dog. And so we're looking forward to getting back to some strength in our independent entrepreneur gastro owners, gastro experiences. And we've got some new tap rooms that have come into place, and we've welcomed them with open arms.
Yeah, absolutely. And I really think June 1 is going to be a big marker. I think we're going to have enough, there's a lot of vaccine getting into the community and some other things that I think I think we're going to be looking better the beginning of the second half than the end of the second half.
I agree.
Anyway, so good stuff.
Good stuff.
I think we're in a good position, and we're also on a good storm track. So we're going to be getting some more snow here pretty soon.
That's what I understand. Are you heading up? Are you going to have a hooky day?
I tried to talk a client into maybe changing the Thursday morning dynamic a little bit, but I might have to do something late Thursday afternoon instead. See what's left over. But yeah.
Yep. Head straight to tier 2. Well, Mike, it's been an absolute privilege to get to spend this much time with you. I glanced at the camera at the clock just to see, like, do I need to keep going with my amazing list of things that I want to know about Mike Foster? And I realized, we're about overtime at this point. It's just so nice to talk with you, and just great to listen and learn. And we appreciate you.
Yeah. Fantastic. Thanks for having me. Really appreciate it.
You betcha. Hey, be safe out there, and can't wait to see you on the streets, and shake up some dirt.
Okay.
All right, Mike. Cheers.
Thanks for listening. This is Christy Reese signing out from the Full Circle Podcast.